So welcome everybody, really glad to have you here. And if you found the chat, you've probably also found the Q&A section as well. So there's no questions in there yet, but feel free to drop your questions in throughout today's chat, because as we go, I'll try to pick out some questions from here and we'll have room at the end as well. But we're going to be having a chat with Ezinne. I invited her in because what we basically do here is we have this series of webinars. And I'm going to come back to this. We have this series of webinars here at ProdPad, and we always talk about different areas of expertise or different topics, different things that that are interesting to product people like yourselves. And I first met Ezinne at MTPCon, Mind the Product Conference in London in 2019, when she was one of the keynote speakers there. And we hung out over breakfast that morning. So, you know, we sat and had breakfast, and we talked about, you know, a lot of you probably know about this concept of outputs versus outcomes. And you definitely want to be aiming for outcomes. And what Ezinne had done, she reframed it in a way that I hadn't heard before, which was to think about like beyond the outcomes and think about impact. And in my mind, I hadn't really separated impact from outcomes, but as she spoke, she created this real aha moment for me. And so I thought that was really, really interesting. And then she went on to absolutely smash it on the MTPCon stage later that day. She talked about how to create conditions for teams to be successful. She was absolutely amazing. I definitely recommend checking out her talk on the Mind the Product site. Ezinne is the VP of Product at Procore Technologies, and she leads the platform product initiatives and has a focus in data and AI and building out the ecosystem and marketplace. So wide remit, really interesting set of different things that she's working on there that we're going to talk about today. Wow. And she's also had a really stellar career as a product leader with companies like Bazaar Voice, Time Inc., Discovery, T-Mobile. So perhaps some places you've all heard of. And we are going to be, you know, with this huge range of experience. I know that there's so much that we can talk about. So I'm going to make sure that we've got room to get your questions in. I've got some questions for Ezinne. So ask your questions in the Q&A bar in Zoom, and we'll try to pick these up throughout the session. And if we spot some good ones coming in during the time, and then at the end, we'll pick up whatever questions have come in as we have time for them. So Ezinne, huge welcome. Thank you so much for joining today. Everyone, say hello to Ezinne.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here. What a great intro. I feel seen, if anything. Right? Thanks for that. I don't think I have to say anything, but I can definitely throw out that I'm excited to be here, and I can't wait to hear. I mean, I'll do my best to connect with you all and answer your questions. Because of our schedules, we didn't get a chance to prep. I know some of you know these things, they're prep sessions, but I think we'll nail it. Let's see how it goes.
Excellent, wonderful. So good to have you here. And before we dive in, I just want to talk a little bit about who we are as well. So ProdPad is a tool that was built by myself and my co-founder, Simon. We were both product managers, and we're also both co-founders of Mind the Product, who are the folks behind the World Product Day. So again, happy World Product Day. And essentially, when we were product managers, we needed tools to do our own jobs, and nothing really existed at that point in time. So we needed something to keep track of our experiments and something to help us understand how we were going to hit our business objectives and how we were going to solve our customers' problems, and basically to help us keep tabs on all the ideas and feedback that made up our backlog. So building ProdPad gave us control and organization and transparency. And it wasn't long before we started sharing with other product people around us. And today it's used by thousands of teams around the world. So it's free to try. You can jump in and start your trial. It has a sandbox mode, which has preloaded data that you can play with. And you can see things like how lean roadmaps and OKRs and experiments and everything else sort of fits together in one product management space. Our team is made up of product people. So start a trial, let us know what actually works. And we do have a really interesting special launch today. And I've actually just added this slide. I'm excited about it because it's a brand new feature called Ask Dotbot. And Dotbot is our little AI friend who sits within ProdPad, who helps you deduplicate and merge ideas and find connections between feedback and ideas. But today you can ask Dotbot questions like, what frustrates customers about this particular feature, or what do customers love about our product, or how can we improve this particular feature or this particular area of our product. And it will write back to you and tell you based on the feedback in your ProdPad backlog. It is in there and working as part of a beta, and be interesting to find any feedback if anybody has it. Keep in mind, it is beta, it is brand new. We launched this literally a couple hours ago. So this is how we roll, but just wanted to get this out there and tell people what's going on here. And somebody in the chat has just pointed out that our Google snippet for the pricing plan is a little bit off. Our pricing does not start at several $millions per month. I assure you, it is considerably less than that. But thank you, Joe, for pointing that out. We will get on and get that one sorted. All right, cool. Pricing actually starts at like $149 a month, so that's considerably more reasonable. Okay, so let's jump in and talk to Ezinne. Right, so we're going to have some interesting questions in here because you've got this really wide range of experiments. You've done things from leading on partnerships at T-Mobile. You've moved into the media space with Discovery and then Time. You bounced over to the B2B space at Bizarre Voice, and now you're leading platform efforts at this Procore company, which is in the construction industry. Do you find it's been jarring to move from space to space? Or do you find that your experience from one helps you translate from one to the other? How does that work?
I don't think it's jarring at all, but it really has to do with me understanding who I am. One of the things I learned about myself is that I love to learn. Like I remember, in fact, in my early days, one of my interview pitches was that I scale learning curves. It's my superpower. I'm a little more humble about that, and I just enjoy challenging work. And one of the things that goes with that is I get bored really easily. So I need to have things that are pushing me and challenging me. So those switches are part of me solving my problems, right? I need to have a job that allows me to take 60% of what I know in the past and have it be applicable day one if possible. And a good amount of 40% is just unknown. Me trying to figure it out, me trying to learn, me trying to grow. And that's an important thing for me. And if I stay with an organization, I will change departments. I will change, like in the 2 years, I've moved from running platforms to now driving the audience business for Procore. It's just the way I'm built. But I will say this, for those of you who may be worried about changing industries, I think that you'll learn, number one, at this point in my career, it's the same type of job. It really is. It's crafting strategy. It's crafting product systems, which I can talk about what product systems are, which is just how do you do product, or what is your product playbook? And then it really is about pairing my team and their skills, right, and their ambitions to the business outcomes, right? It's just, that's the job. And obviously, a part of it is also using your experience and what I call the beauty of pattern recognition from the past problems you've solved to solve new problems, right? And just see the problem space through a fresh set of eyes. And you'll be surprised at how you can pull from the experiences you've had in the past into a brand new industry. So don't be afraid. I've learned a lot in a short amount of time by making these switches.
That's really good to hear. And that's actually a question I get from product managers a lot is, as to whether they should move to a new space that they haven't been familiar with. And, as you said, I like how you said that the pattern recognition that you have, I like to think of it as you're bringing fresh eyes into a business. You're able to ask the questions that that other people may not have thought of to ask because they've been in this space the whole time. But, bringing in new patterns from or existing patterns that worked in other industries into new spaces can be hugely powerful for those companies.
Yeah, I will say that you should have an interest in the industry. I think you should just have a way to identify with them. I think what I loved about construction, which is really odd, but it's construction tech, so it's still building a platform, is that we were serving an underserved group of people. But ultimately, our goal was to provide a collaboration platform. And there are many, many, many different collaboration platforms out there. So you can learn from what others did well, what they didn't do right. And so that gave me the confidence to step into the space. So I'm either working on collaboration, features or I'm working on productivity features. Those are well known, but I'm doing it in the context of a brand new industry of construction. So there were some knowns, but there were unknowns, and I was excited about the balance in the two.
Oh, I love that. So you're basically taking what's worked for other spaces and bringing it to this new space that hasn't really had the benefit of all the tech that we've built for everyone else. If you work in the tech space, you're spoiled for choice with tools, and I'm guessing in construction you're not yet, but you're changing that.
Yes.
Yeah. And I love how you said that you're bored easily. I mean, I think that's actually a skill. I think it's a bonus, and it's something that exists in so many great product managers that I know, because I think it's the flip side of us being creative, you know, the type of people who get in and find interesting problems and, you know, are constantly looking for interesting ways to solve things that otherwise may have just been left as is.
Yes, yes, that's the case. I think that it just is it honestly is the flip side of the coin. It is, you know, you're really curious, and whenever you get to a point where you're not finding things that pique your interest, then it takes away some of the wonder, right? So anyway, that's just how I think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, that whole thing where they say, like, you should hold a job for several years or more. And I'm like, no, don't listen to that. You know, move on. If you're not learning, then move on, right? And some of the best ways to move up are to move across to interesting spaces where you can take what you learned elsewhere and apply it.
I will say I spent 10 years at T-Mobile, right? At T-Mobile, and I just got to do different things. So I'm not one to jump around. I just need to find big problems to solve. So I just encourage folks to look at different ways to solve problems as a product person. So it's good.
Yeah. And speaking of which, I mean, solving those big problems, I mean, you've been operating at a pretty senior level for most of your career, it seems like. And so it seems like you probably had a hand in product strategy across a bunch of different landscapes. So what have you learned from handling strategy in so many different forms?
Fundamentally, strategy is about creating a framework about how you play and win in the game of business. That's it, right? And doing it in a set period of time. And with that lens, right, you realize that all it really is, I mean, I'm oversimplifying it, but it's a decision on how you will make many decisions on how you will win, okay? So in order to do that, there's some things that are really just important. The first is, you're making a decision how you play and win, right? You have to agree on how you win. And I've actually seen a lot of people make mistakes on not spending the time to align with the business, whether it's the CEO or the board, on what winning is, and then doing all the other things that come along with it, right? I feel really lucky because in my current job, my manager is Wyatt Jenkins, and we've gone through this process of building strategy. And in the process, it's helped me codify that it really comes down to some basic things. It is the marriage of an insight, like you get an insight about what's going on in the space and insights on what it is you need to do to win, and then laying out the choices and then choosing that framework and rolling that out and ensuring everybody's bought into it, because decisions will have to be made day in, day out on how we spend time, what we build, what we prioritize. And if there's clarity on the framework and how we got to that framework, that's how strategy is then executed.
Right, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so any gotchas that have tripped you up, or others in your space as you sort of grapple with product strategy in these sort of situations?
So the commonality I've seen across all organizations is that we need deep insights from the customer, competitive, technology trends, like where are things going, and then this idea of insights from stakeholders, right? Which is what I say, when you get insight from stakeholders, is talking to all the people that really do matter for the business side and aligning on what winning looks like. But oftentimes we think that you can sit in one place and come up with all these insights by yourself and not really bring the rest of the organization to participate with you. And that's the major gotcha I've always run up against, not bringing in the right people and having them be involved. So, I mean, I can confidently say that after many years, I finally learned that when I'm working on, I mentioned 4 core insights: competitor, customer, technology, and business. Those are 4 elements that you need, of insights you need for your strategy, in my opinion. There are many more. So if you're building an ecosystem, you want to understand your partner insights as an example, right? But if you have those four at a minimum, you don't have to do it yourself. You can literally create surveys with the rest of the organization, really bring them along so that they feel like they were part of articulating those core insights. Bring our entire marketing team and ask them, what are they seeing in the competitive space? And what do they think is going to happen in 3 years from now, if that's your time frame? Do the same thing with your product organization. Get them involved, because that process of getting them involved in identifying the core insights allows them to understand, when they read those insights, as to why did you come up with these choices and what informed the final choice, right? As an example, you may say, we want to be, given what we've learned, we want to be an enterprise based only. We're going to focus on big enterprise accounts. We're a B2B platform, as an example, right? There were signs and signals from your competitors, what winning looks like, to make you make that decision. And just having your organization as a whole involved in it will make it so apparent as to why that choice, like, this is the choice we're making. There may have been 2 others or 3 others that were competitive, that were similar or worthwhile, but because they were involved in the journey, their buy-in is often easier and it's higher as a result. So that's the gotcha that most people need to address, just bringing others along.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I say something similar with the roadmap, is that when you present the roadmap, it shouldn't be like people are seeing it for the first time, like, surprise, this is the grand plan. It should be something that they have fed into in a million different ways, in all the different interactions and conversations and everything like that, right? It should be something based on what they know about the business and what you know about them. And by the time it comes out in some sort of roadmap format, it should just be articulating what you've all sort of agreed are the problems anyways, just in some format that, it structures it in a way that people can move around.
Yeah, I honestly used to think that there was a brilliance about writing strategy and yes, come up with the commandments from on high. No, it doesn't.
Put a dot on the end and it's done. We now just need to do the strategy and we're sorted. It's never quite like that. No, no, absolutely. We've actually got a question from Joe here. Joe asked, what do you do when your business can't decide what it wants to do and changes its mind frequently?
Oh, I don't know at what elevation we're speaking of, but oftentimes if you show it to them, I'll tell you an example. I had this priority list for a group of my stakeholders, and I showed them how they prioritized 3 months ago, then how they prioritized 3 months after, and then another, and they could see it was all over the place. And it was my opportunity to show them why product exists, right? The sales team, you talk to these 3 customers, and all of a sudden that's the most important thing. And then you talk to another set of customers, and that's the most important thing. So I got into a meeting, it was actually this Monday, yes. And I got to show them, I was like, this is what you said was most important last month. 6 months ago, then 3 months ago. Now this is what's important. They saw and understood why their priorities were changing and how it was affecting. And so it was easy for me to say, my job is to take all this as signal, because you are focused on maybe short term or whatever it is. And my job is to actually extract out of this and build and again, pattern recognize and really think about the future and not go through this roly-poly with you. So I think if you actually do take the time to shine a mirror back at them, oftentimes it's actually, people will brace and really stop and think about what it is they're doing. And it may offer some signal into them and just have them understand the cost of an impact of their changing their mind so frequently. I don't know the elevation. If you're talking about your leadership team not knowing what, then it is because they haven't agreed on what winning is. And it's so often the case when people aren't sure about what winning is, any dollar is important versus the $10 or the $100. So yeah, I'm hoping I'm answering it at all elevations at this point.
That's really good. I love that, because you gave sort of a complete answer, like for the middle part of the team as well as the leadership side of the team. And honestly, it could have been for both sides, because I see that all in all sorts of different sides of the team. And Joe's just said, that's great, thank you. So I think you nailed it. And everybody else, if you have other questions, drop them into the question section, and we will jump into them. And I've got a question because I mean, Ezinne, you've been working at huge established businesses. So you've been walking into places like Discovery and Time and places like this that, you know, probably have existing strategies, existing adjacent strategies. You know, they probably have a tech strategy and a market strategy, and you've got to squeeze your product strategy in there, and it probably already exists and has opinions. How do you shape your product strategy in that sort of environment?
So I think it's really important to understand your environment, right? The influence of product strategy on the whole company basically varies on the nature of the business, right? B2B, B2C, is it a product first company? Is it a small company? Is it a B2B? And you have to understand that. You actually have to first understand that. What may not be clear in the arc of my career is that even though I'm doing platform now, I really spend quite a bit of time as a innovation PM. Like I came in to build Timing's new product development team and a growth PM. But in each case, I always inherited the platform just somehow because we weren't moving fast enough. And I was like, give me that team, or they gave a team to me. So most times I was the growth person coming in to build new businesses. And it's so much easier. When you're trying to recraft an existing product, it is harder, but it requires that you stop and really get a sense of, hey, is the product the end all or be all? And if it is, you honestly have to make sure you're talking to all the stakeholders and ensuring that the embodiment of all the desires the business has, the embodiment of all the things your customers desire show up in this product, right? But if you are in a different type of business where the services team is slightly separate and serves as, then you need to ask yourself, is the product serving adjacent to services? And if that's the case, then you're solving a very different problem, but you should do it in concert. So all in all, it's a partnership. It really is a partnership. And I said that there were 4 core parts, which is technology, competitive, customer, and stakeholder. It just breaks apart the stakeholder into much more components. Now you need to spend time and get insights from them, from all the other adjacent business units, and have that determine the choices you will make about your product. And that's how you get the product strategy. Sorry, I know I went all textbooky on you, but I hope that helps.
No, that sort of stuff definitely helps. Thanks so much. Really appreciate that. All right. So you touched a little bit about your work on the platform. So at Procore, you're leading the product platform initiatives. So for the uninitiated, what does platform actually mean, and how is that different from regular product management?
Wow. So platform definition, because I've had to kind of talk about this quite a bit, is like a platform is a group, at least in this sense, in software, in modern software product management, is like it's a group of technologies or capabilities that are used as a base, right, upon which applications and experiences are built or developed, right? And this is Ezinne's definition, having done, at least in my group. I think of platform PMing in 3 main categories. You're either building technology solutions, which are like data platform, or just things that are pure technology solutions. You're building technology capabilities or horizontal capabilities. Think of that as authentication, login, things that you don't want the multiple products in your platform to have to do over and over again. They are shared capabilities. But then you also have these horizontal experiences like search. You don't want each product defining its own search methodology and the UX experience for search. So I think of them as 3. And in my team, I have all 3. People who are just technical, they only want to focus on like data platform and they love bits and bytes and software development and they're really close. And then I have these folks who are building these technology capabilities that are both user experience, but they're also pretty technical, but they're about scale and really helping the entire product line. And then I have these horizontal experiences that ensure that the product is elegant and that it's consistent every time and everywhere you open up an experience within our entire product suite, it feels the same. So that's what we consider platform PM. And it's different because you don't get the same rewards, right? As ARR or adoption. It's not as easy to see the value. So these folks are wired a little differently. They actually often just are excited at the impact they're having, which is they're touching everything. the value of what they're building just scales. So it's a different mindset. You're not always the most celebrated person, but it's amazing because I actually spend time every year checking with all my platform PMs, asking them, hey, do you still want to do this? Is this still your jam? If it isn't, let's get you to where you can get all the glory. But I'm always fascinated. Some people are just wired differently. They understand that every single day they show up, people are feeling and enjoying and experiencing what they're working on. And it's not just a small cohort of users. And that's their jam. They like that. So that's a difference. You have to, as a function, so let me say one more thing. As a functional PM, like as a horizontal PM, one other thing you're doing is pattern recognizing. So let me give you an example. If you're working on search, right? And there's a product line that their users prefer search a certain way. Another product line says, no, it has to be a vertical list. Another prefers it a horizontal list. You have to listen to all of these experiences, spend time with those product managers, customers themselves, and try and understand their pain. So you have two sets of customers almost, the internal folks, but then you also need to spend time with the external folks so that you know them better than even these vertical product leaders. And from that, you can then extract what is the best choice, because you have to solve it for as many people as possible. That is what platform PMing is ultimately about.
Right. Okay. I love that. I love that. So you've got different types of users. You've got different ways of measuring it. It's something that's spanning something much wider than individual products, but therefore having much more impact. Yes. But it's harder to measure that impact, which is the harder way to the other side of that coin.
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. And so somebody's asked, and this is an anonymous question: is platform different than ecosystem?
It is. It actually is.
Okay.
I think that the ability for your platform to have others participate in it and expand its value is ecosystem, right? You can build a platform like Amazon as an example, where there are many reusable components, et cetera, but others do not participate. You don't find the AWS as an example. It's a full-on platform, but you don't find others adding value to it necessarily. It just it is a very horizontal service. It's a platform service. An ecosystem takes that a little further, and it usually is the proof point that a platform has actually truly reached maturity, is that now not only does first party, your internal teams, not only are they able to use those shared services, you can have second party, which is your customers, build value into your platform. But more importantly, you can now have third party build value into your platform. That's ecosystem. That's having others come alongside you and improve the value of what you're delivering to the customer.
That's wonderful. That is right on point. That's the best description I've heard of the difference between ecosystem and platform. Nailed it. That's perfect. All right, great. And so is platform strategy dramatically different than managing your overall product strategy?
Your platform strategy has to be in service of your product strategy, which has to be in service of your corporate strategy. Yeah,
makes sense. Yeah. They've all got to play nice together then.
They do. They do.
Yeah. All right. And I love what you said about, working with your team and checking that they're still on board with this and making sure that they're still getting what they need out of that. That's a sign of a really good manager, that you care about their success and that they're actually working on the right things for them as well. What's your team like at Procore? I guess you manage a bunch of different people. How have you organized them, and how do they work, and why?
That's a tricky question because it depends on what day. I'll start off with just high level context for Procore, and I'll try and say stuff that I can say out loud. So Procore generally has product teams, product teams, the things our customers can go out and buy.
Yep.
We then have platform teams. There are about 8 of them: data, flexibility, ecosystem, security, infrastructure, messaging, identity, all the things I just kind of talked about. Then we have our audience teams. Think about them as market teams, where we have core markets we want to go into, international, et cetera. And then we have technology teams. And not all the technology teams don't have PMs. We just let engineering do its thing. It's usually developer productivity. When I manage both platform teams and a market team. So when I think about how I organize platform teams, I'm actually asking, is this a cross-cutting concern that its value is clearly understood? So ecosystem, easy, right? Security, it's clear that, hey, the security of our application platform is important. How people get in, how people stay on, like, and who's on here, that matters. So it has to have really clear, I don't want to use the word outcomes because I think that's overused. It has to have a clear mission and a contribution to our platform, right? To all the solution space. So that's how I choose to organize our platform teams. Does that help?
Yeah, I think that does help. Yeah, and Fumnanya asked the $1 million question here, which is, how have you been able to build a high-performing team? I feel that there's so much wrapped up in that.
A high. Any of my people who log in and listen to this will laugh because I say this all the time. Strong opinions, loosely held.
Love that.
Iron, sharpening iron.
Ooh.
And clarity on results and impact. And I'm going to overstate this one a little. And maybe the last one is, it's not about us, it's about us. And so strong opinions, loosely held. My teams all know that you have to come to the table with a point of view, right? And it's okay to debate. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to not know. I told you we value learning, so that's important. And with those two things, iron sharpening iron, we work on trust. And I think that ultimately, I'm trying to get the team to trust each other so that they can share. I'm the VP that will share my work at 10%, typos and all, because I need to get the idea out there and have people say, this is the dumbest thing we have ever heard. And by doing that, it opens it up to folks just leaning in and being vulnerable. So, and then when I say it's about us, but it's not about us, I always say, nobody has stock or equity in data and AI. What you have stock and equity in is in Procore or in Time Inc., right? So it's not about you winning or this team looking great. It's about what is the right thing for Procore or what is the right thing for T-Mobile. So it's a mix of being vulnerable and open, trusting and speaking your mind. I think those things begin, and then having this shared mission of all of us, those are the core elements that I think begin to help you move towards a high-performing team.
I really like those elements. I hadn't heard the iron sharpening iron one, but it sounds reminiscent of the stuff that goes into building psychological safety, making people feel safe speaking up at work about if they see something wrong or if they feel like they want to bring an idea to the table and don't want to have it shot down. The whole idea table, and sure, it might get shot down because some ideas are terrible, and that's okay. You should be able to bring your terrible ideas to the table, and so should everybody else, because some of those ideas might be brilliant if you mash them up in just the right way. And that's where the genius comes from, is the groups of people working together, bringing the talents together. At the end of the day, that's what a company is. It's the groups of people and their talent. It's there's no magic that happens within companies. It's just how we organize and how we share the insights that we have collectively.
I think the thing I failed to say during the strategy piece is this idea of shared context. Oftentimes, the idea people provide isn't because they aren't smart. If they don't have the context that the other person has, right?
Yeah.
So the more you can put stuff on the table,
yeah,
the more you are sharing context. And the more shared context there is, the faster you can get to resolution or decision.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, what I like to say is the concept around prototyping your strategy. So as designers, like if you have a new feature, you wouldn't just take this new feature and just, take something out of your head and give it to the developers or code it out and throw it out there live, because it's almost certainly going to be pretty junk. Your first ideas are always terrible, and that's okay. They get stronger by putting them down on paper and showing it to somebody, and they tell you what's wrong with it, and you change it, you move some stuff around. And the more times you get feedback on it, this thing moves from being flimsy to being more sturdy, right? So it's a better idea, it becomes a better feature. It's more likely to solve the problem.
Yes.
A strategy is the same thing. Like if it doesn't get air, if it doesn't see the light of day from other people, it's just going to be this flimsy strategy that's going to fall down at the first time. Somebody's going to say, oh, but you didn't think about this. You know, that part of your strategy is illegal or is going to fall over because the competitors have done this instead, or because whatever else has happened. And so, I tell people that they can use their roadmap to lay out their assumptions about what their strategy is, show it to people, and they'll come back saying, whoa, I disagree with this. You're like, cool, I'm really glad you said that before we committed the next 6 months to the wrong strategy.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
Yeah. All right, we've got some other questions in here, kind of around the platform area again. Agnieszka asked about what kind of metrics do you use? She said that she used the PO for a payments platform, and she's struggling to define KPIs, which would be meaningful and actionable. Any tips on that?
It's hard. I would be lying if I didn't clarify. I'm literally going through that with one of my teams. I think it's important to do what I call top down and bottom up, right? Top down is tied to this idea of impact. What really matters to the business? Like what really does? And for me as a platform lead, the two things that I found matter to the business the most is, hey, is this platform nimble enough and extensible enough to expand us into new markets effectively and efficiently? Like we're not paying so much money and having to add new developers to do, more, to get more customers. And then do people stay? Those are the core things that matter, like revenue, retention, that's it. And from there, I'm going into each team and figuring out how is this body of work able to do that? How is this body of work able to do that? Then I actually ask the PMs to start bottom up. Search wants to increase time to value. Why is that meaningful? Why? So it's that question of 5 whys. Why do you want to increase that, right? Because we want to get people to their stuff early. So it is a delicate dance. There's no quick answer. It requires mind mapping. It requires bringing people together. But I will say that you have to do it from top down and bottom up. And you'll find that wonderful middle ground. That said, some great frameworks that I always use, right? And it's not always applicable everywhere, but I love pirate metrics, right? Because no matter what, it doesn't have to be adoption as pirate metric says it. It could be just internal adoption of your service, right? So if you think about adoption, activation, or no, acquisition, adoption, activation, and then you go all the way down, you can ask yourself, what does this mean in the context of a platform solution? And it really begins to reveal a lot to you. So I personally love the framework, but as I go through and each team goes through its framework, I think that they should go from bottom up and then top down. And you'll find that never one single metric. They're often supporting metrics that are leading metrics, and the bucket of them drive the outcomes you want.
Excellent. I found that really helpful as well. I've done something similar. I like your 5 whys and the top down and the bottom up approach. One thing that I sort of say is play it back. So if you were to do all of these metrics, let's say you were to hit all of these things that you just said you were going to hit, if you're to play it back, does it achieve the big thing that you wanted at the end? Or do you just have a bunch of little things that have been achieved but doesn't actually add up to anything? So that's where the bottom up starts becoming the top down, and you can start comparing the two. If they don't match up, then you haven't actually met in the middle anywhere, and you need to kind of match those two up together. Yeah,
in the MTPCon, I talked about this, and I called it linking. You have to link each thing to the other. So it's a painful, it's not a painful exercise, it's just an exercise. People just skip it. I don't know why.
Yeah. And it's all about that cohesion, right? It's making sure that everything's just playing nicely together, right? It's creating a cohesive story from beginning to end and from top to bottom.
Yes, it is.
Yep. All right, cool. So, I I know that many of us have probably recognized most of the companies you've worked for, like Time Inc. and Discovery, and I mean, Bizarre Voice is one that I know as well. Have you been involved with scaling product operations within these, or where you are now at Procore?
I have in several of them. And I just did this recent talk on something called product systems. Yeah. And it's this idea of being intentional and deliberate about how you do product. Not everybody gets the luxury of a product operations leader, but a product operations manager. But as product leaders, it is our role to look at the 3 or 4 or 5 PMs trying to do the same darn thing, right, 17 times, and going, wow, we could do this better. Like, we could actually begin to help people with the process for writing or sizing an opportunity. We can help them with the process for, right? This is how, basically, when I think of what scaling product is, it is answering the question of how do we do product at Procore? How do we do product at? And it's different. So in my other company, we didn't have this idea of opportunity assessments. We did it another way. But at Procore, we have opportunity assessments, and they have to look a certain way. They have to answer certain questions, and they have to go through a certain process. Many people just don't spend the time to articulate that. And then you see people spending so many cycles, right? Trying to figure out, how do I get my idea bought into? How do I get it approved? How do I get engineering staffing? And everybody's doing it their way. So I see a lot of waste in things like that, which is why I believe in this idea of creating a playbook or a product system, right? Either you have one for hiring, you have one for how we do product, how you do one for managing dependencies, but you have to have some articulation of. By the time you see 3 or more people doing something, you should ask yourself, are there patterns here that we can build upon? That said, a system is not a rule or a process, because that is a non-living thing. You want it to be a system that is iterated upon, that is living, and basically serves as the floor. This is the minimum. It just serves as the floor of excellence, right? Because you want people to make it better. You want people to constantly improve it. So I don't know, it's product systems is a whole talk in and of itself, but I've been involved in it. And I think it's actually a piece, when I think about leaders doing product strategy, doing matching people to their talent and ambition, the other piece of the work is scaling product management as a whole and creating playbooks for the organization. I think that's a part of the job as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a space that I think is going to explode over the next few years, because product, I mean, give it, 10 years ago was just this new sort of space that we were exploring and people were just moving into. And now there's product managers all over the place, but we all do it differently because none of us are trained for this, right? We all sort of learned this from each other and from the internet, essentially. And so, this idea of having some sort of consistency and somebody showing the way and providing some sort of overarching system or operations, it's just like how companies will have a sales ops or marketing ops or things like that. It's high time that we have some sort of product ops and some sort of consistent product systems in place.
But yeah, I think it's going to be, that's where this function will live, right? But I think that if you were to give a product ops person the opportunity to do this without being informed by the leader and the PMs, then it ends up being a rigid process, right? But you want a real system, and that requires that it be living, right? Like any product thing, that it's iterated upon. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
And that's such a good point, because product management is such a hard thing to put a pin on, because it is just the concept of constantly learning and iterating and adapting. And so, it's not about, do X number of things by X time or whatever else. There's so much that goes into it, but it's, I think, as you said, an adaptive system more than anything.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, very interesting to see where that goes. And you said that this is something that you speak about more, so I'd be very interested if you have anything else that you could share with us on that to learn more about that area as well.
Okay.
Excellent. Now, I want to go back to the thing that we talked about over breakfast, because that's the thing that really stuck with me. And you've sort of touched on it a little bit today. Your take on how teams can drive results by thinking about not only outcomes, but about impact as well. Can you talk us through the difference and how we can use these in our own work?
So I wish I could say that that came from a place of knowledge. It actually came from a place of questioning more than knowledge. It was me just trying to I had this struggle in my mind. And I think you touched on it when you said, how do all these outcomes ladder up to something meaningful, right? And I just saw us when we were having that breakfast, I just saw a lot of people talking about outcomes, and there was something missing about it all. I'll tell you a story. And when I was at T-Mobile, this is many years ago, and it sat with me, and I hope the story helps you understand the whole point. All the product managers were focused on how do we charge for, I know I'm going to age myself, MMS, SMS, text messages, right? They were building all these things to help you send more messages. And I don't know what it was, but I got the opportunity to speak to my CPO, my chief product officer at that point. It was weird, or CTO, I don't remember his title. And he made it clear to me that one thing was really important to the business, that we were losing customers. We're losing a lot of customers. Our churn was ridiculous. Not sure how, but I asked to be assigned to sit at the save queue. The save queue is where anybody who's calling to cancel their contract gets moved to. In sitting there, I got to listen to the reason why people were calling to quit. Why do they want out of their contract? And all of that information informed some strategy later. And we ended up focusing on something called coverage. We ended up building a coverage solution, Wi-Fi calling. This was a long time ago. But we also worked on something called a femtocell, as well as a repeater, so that your cell coverage was better. And then we also worked on how we deepen our cell towers. But I wasn't working on the sexy new messaging, new browser, all the things. I worked on something that was really behind the scenes, but it was so impactful for the business. We ended up creating an entirely new division that focused on coverage solutions. And that was impactful. That's the difference. It's that, yes, you can help us make $1 million, but gosh, we're losing 12 million in churn. And that, being able to address that had a higher business impact. So you nailed it when you said, how does all of this ladder up to something that is meaningful to the business? And the things that really keep your board of directors or your stakeholders, shareholders up at night, not at the expense of your customer, but how do you bring these customer outcomes in such a way that they also add value, either are improving sales, expediting sales, reducing trust or fines that may come up. That's what I meant. And it really, honestly, I wish I could say, yeah, this is what it means and this is how you measure. It's simply asking yourself, is this even worth it? Is this really driving value? That is what I haven't seen a lot of people do. So what that we got search to up 200%, right? Is that going to actually have a strong impact, or should we be solving that security issue that could land us on the front page of some paper, right?
Yeah.
So that's the tension I wanted us to kind of think about.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, because as I started wrapping it around in my own head, I realized how it fits with OKRs in my own head, right? Because OKRs are very much focused on, the outcomes, like what it is that you're hoping to get, and it might be things like, let's get, our search is up by this, or our NPS, or other figures like that, some of which might be outcome based, but some of which might be leading or lagging indicators of success. But the thing is like, are these things, like, what's the so what, right? You do all this stuff, and at the end of the day, you've done all these OKRs, everyone's achieved everything. Do you have a great business? Do you have something that you're going to, shout home about and say, yes, we're now on track with our vision. This is something that's going to impact our business. And so I really like how you framed it in that way and sort of said, well, what's beyond that? I was like, oh, that's a good point.
I think Joe has a question that is actually tied to this, where he asks, in a SaaS business with customer journeys and infrequent long time frames, how do you validate the benefit of feature A versus feature B? If I could say, if we did A, it would drive 5% reduction in churn, or supporting this would drive an extra 50 sales a year, my life would be a lot easier, but I'm not sure how to get there. And that is the problem, right? There is a way. You just have to keep asking, what's the so what? So you drive feature A, okay, why? Because you're going to make improve NPS. Why is improving NPS great? Then is 50 points of NPS improvement worth it? Like just really asking yourself why. And it's painful and you won't know, but finding stakeholders that maybe sit above you, right, can help you draw that connective tissue. And you may find out that a really, really good idea is just not worth it because it doesn't drive the final impact that you need it to. So find something that will then drive 80 points change in NPS instead, because that is demonstrably more valuable. So when we say PMing is hard, this is why it's hard.
There's a lot of reasons it's hard, and this is one of them.
One of them. Yeah, that's it. This is one of them. I think we've done so much better around the tools and customer discovery and everything. And I think we can end up in this place where we're dancing and celebrating all the outcomes and this, but when you have your CEO in the room, can you answer the question of so flipping what, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I meant when I was just trying to contrast the idea of outcome and impact.
Yeah. Yeah, it brings me back to the book Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, where it talks about your strategy should be around, something that gives you a competitive advantage, something that's unique to you, something that, there's a lot of things you could do. There's a lot of actions you could take, but the ones that you outline, the steps that you take should be something that speak to your particular company and to your particular situation. Of course, this book doesn't tell you what your strategy should be, but it certainly gives you that feeling of, oh, you got to figure out what your particular stepping stones are going to be. And it starts clearing out things. And you start going, actually, you know what? 5% reduction in churn isn't what's going to make that big difference. But actually, if we get these big logo clients, that's going to make a big difference for our team or for our company. Or for another company, it might be the absolute opposite, right? Their strategy might be literally the opposite of what I've just said. And that is cool for them because that's their strategy and what works for them in their particular cases.
Exactly. In one instance, we knew that if we lost one particular client, it would be almost the end of our business. So everything we did was really around trying to ensure that we met their needs. Right? We needed a strategy that was beyond them, but it had to meet their need in some way. I won't tell you whom and which company, but it was important to not lose that client because that they were the big ones in the whole world.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's product management is always about dealing with these tough constraints that were dealt. Right? Yeah. You never walk into companies going, oh, well, it's just going to be like it is in the textbook, because there is no textbook. And frankly, nothing is ever like that. We never get this green field, steady state. We walk in and you find out that there's tech debt and politics and existing customers who expect things and that one client who runs your roadmap and all these things that happen. And you've got to find your way through it. And it's really empowering to hear you share different stories of ways that you've dealt your way around them as well.
Yes, thank you.
And so one of the things that really piqued my interest when we were chatting a couple of weeks ago about what you might talk about, what you talk about when you talk about product management, you said something about what's at the heart of product management. So we're all dying to know, what is at the heart of product management?
So, gosh, it is people, questions, and results. That's a very simplified version of it, but it ultimately is either people, your customers that you're doing discovery with, right? It is about questions and decisions you have to make, whether the questions you're asking your customers or it's the problems you have to solve, and then results. So you have to get all three right. That's kind of how I feel. And as a product leader, same thing. It's my people, right? What problems am I solving? The questions I'm asking, the things I'm posing, and then I'm measured by the results. So it was the name of a talk I gave, and I ultimately had to say, if you sharpen your ability to have empathy for your customers, to get other people to work on your behalf, if you find ways to communicate clearly to people and have them execute a strategy, you begin to win. If you know how to frame questions, ask the why, the what, the when, in any meeting, just always have clarity on what, why, and when. you also begin to stand out. And if you can honestly talk about why you showed up matter. So what result, why are you taking up air? Why is your dev team showing up? Right?
Harsh.
I know, but it's ultimately, you showed up, so what? Like, if you can also clarify that for you, you win. So the combination of all three things, I think, is fundamentally what it's all about. Just get good at these three areas. I know it's very simplistic, but it's a formula that's worked for me. And it's funny, it isn't unique to product management, but it is core to what we do every day.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's core to how somebody provides value in a business context, whether that's product management or wherever else. It's what problem are you solving for the business? And as a product manager, you should be asking yourself that question, and being able to show that that work and communicate that to people.
Yeah, but I think even more so, you are leveraging others, right? As a product person, whether it's your development team, whether you're talking and asking questions of your customer, there's this element of knowing how to engage and bring others along to help drive results on your behalf. So you've got to nail all of them right. Well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the tricky things about being a product manager, is that you're always in the center, right? You're at the intersection of tech, business, the user, the marketing side. And so you're always working with these different areas and trying to pull out the value from them. And I like the analogy of the heart. I think that's really the powerful. And, it's simplistic, but at the same time, it works. I think that's a really powerful way of framing it.
Yeah. It scales. I'm always looking for those things where I don't have to remember, and then you can say, okay, just fix these three, whatever dimension you want to use for each one. That's good.
Yeah. It scales. I like that. All right, we probably have time for one very quick question. I realize that we've got a couple, some questions now piling in, but I'll send these out to you afterwards, Ezinne, if you'd like to be able to answer them offline. But do you have any favorite books or websites about product management, particularly about strategy? This is a question from Emily. Any resources that we could take away with us?
Gosh, that's hard. I love the hard thing about hard things. I love a lot of Kagan stuff is really good. There's a book called Napoleon's Glance that I read during my MBA, which was really about going from insight to strategy. And I think Good Strategy, Bad Strategy did that too. Gosh, there are many books out there. It's hard, but that's a good place to start. I need to publish a list of my favorite PM books on Twitter at some point. So I'll think about that and put something together.
Excellent. I'd definitely love to see that. We'll share that around when it comes out. Excellent. Well, Ezinne, thank you so much for your time today. You've shared so many insights from your career and over everything that you've learned. It's been brilliant to hear from you. Thank you so much to the audience for listening in and for your questions and everything like that. This is recorded, so it's going to be up on our YouTube channel. Once it's actually out there, keep an eye on your email. We'll send it to you. You'll get a copy of this. And once you're on our YouTube channel, subscribe and you'll get access to our other webinars like this. The previous one was specifically about how to create a killer product strategy. So it sort of did a deep dive into creating product strategy. And our next one is on June 10th, and it's going to be with Petra Wille, who wrote Strong Product People. So keep an eye out keep an eye on your inboxes there, because invites are going out for that tomorrow, I believe. So thank you for your time, Ezinne. Thank you so much. You've been brilliant.
Thanks everyone for spending time with us. Okay, bye.
And happy World Product Day, everybody. Have a great one.
Bye.
Bye.